So we're very excited to have you, Lars Erik Lund. Welcome.
Thank you.
So, for people who don't know who Lars Erik Lund is, what can you tell them?
Well, I'm 52 years old, and I am a father of three, including a dog. So that's a 3+ dog, and then I live just outside of Oslo. I work here in Veidekke, where my title is Executive Vice President of Strategy and Sustainability, which is a mouthful. And I've been working here for about 6 years. And I think the reason that you invited me here is basically because I've been open about my struggles with my mental health.
Correct. I thought it was very very admirable what you did, that you talked openly about depression. So, and also, man, in your position and sector, it's not very common that people do that because there's a lot of stigma and taboo. So that is correct. So if we want to jump straight into that, can you tell us a little bit about why you decided to be open about it?
Yeah, decided is a harsh word. I wonder whether or not I decided to be. I felt obliged to do that. I think I've been feeling like this for a kind of very long time. I think in my entire professional career, I can kind of sense the feeling of being depressed. And it actually kind of became more serious, more pronounced during the pandemic, the last year. So for a year ago, I talked to a very good friend of mine that was open about his own depression and his own struggles. And we spent a lot of time talking about it. And he said that he actually said that he felt like he could control the narrative when he was able to be kind of take control of the narrative himself when he published his story. And this is one of the things that I think a lot of us are afraid of, is that we are being exposed of being depressed at some time. So the risk was always that I was afraid that someone was going to say, Lars Erik is depressed, and then make a big deal out of it.
Label you.
Exactly. So I wrote a text. I think it's probably a year ago. I wrote a text where I said that, well, this is how I am, and I sent it over to a friend of mine, which she's a psychologist, and I asked her what she thought of it. The text. That's basically the text that I published. And she was very clear that this is something that you need to share. And I wasn't ready for it. She said that this is something that probably many people feel the same as you do, but I was ashamed of publishing it. And then in March, earlier this year, I was informed that Veidekke was going to have like their HSE week, like safety and health. And normally Veidekke does these weeks where they focus on wearing the helmet right, or making sure that everything is proper on the construction site, and like the physical things. But this time they had decided to actually talk about mental health and being open about mental health and asking people how they are. And my role in Veidekke kind of puts me in front of a lot of people talking about this. And I just felt that I couldn't do that without actually being open about my own struggles. So I published it in August, and I was very kind of deliberate about how I did it. I wrote a very kind of clean text, and I published it on all the platforms I could think of, making sure that I was terrified that people wouldn't read it, or they would say that it didn't matter any. And then I was extremely surprised the week after, and seeing the kind of traction it got on social media. So that I've been spending a lot of time since then actually talking about mental health at work, and talking about my own depression, but more I actually kind of more talking about how workplaces are creating should kind of work to create a good mental health rather than actually creating depression and overwork or like burnout syndromes and that sort of things.
I see. And if we could go a little bit back in time, so did you grow up in Norway or did you grow up in another country?
No, I grew up in Norway. I had my kind of my bout in the U.S. When my dad went to study in Stanford. Me and my brothers and my mother went with him to stay a year in Sunnyvale, California.
Yeah.
So that year, when I was 2 years old, I can't remember anything about it. So that's the only thing. But the rest of it is pretty normal upbringing in Norway with a normal school, normal things to do, normal education.
Yeah. You miss your time in USA?
I have an affinity for the US. I have an affinity for American football and the sorts of kind of the holidays types of holiday they have, and so I still have an affinity for a lot of the US stuff.
Yeah. And your childhood and teenage years, how were they? Well, what were they composed of?
I think they were pretty normal.
When people often say normal,
because it's hard to say that it's something different. But I grew up with two brothers, one older and one younger.
Yeah.
I told my psychologist that I didn't want to talk about. I didn't want to analyze my childhood because it was perfect, and my psychologist was just a perfect childhood. Let's start there.
I see.
So I think I probably have the same sort of a lot of the same issues, but I've learned a lot the last kind of 6 months about what sort of things that you bring with you from your childhood that you didn't think of. So I understand that you probably spend time as a kid and you're very impressionable, and then start getting kind of feelings and thoughts are connected, and then you make some automatic kind of adjustments to your how you perceive the world.
Yeah.
So, but I can say I really can't say whether or not it's my childhood or whether or not it's some event during my youth that actually produced the way I am today. But I'm extremely interested and very motivated on seeing how a mind actually evolves into the mind I have. So that is it's been a 6 months of reading a lot of this stuff. Yeah.
So when someone might ask you about the childhood, you might perhaps think that some person is trying to find causes.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, okay, I understand. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you feel kind of you feel bad for your parents or brothers and or any other one that you had their childhood with.
I see. So, but good that you mention. but in general, as I agree with you in a way that I don't often think it's a specific event or it doesn't have to be no one's fault. But I think upbringing or experiences are important, regardless of how they lead to some conditions later in life.
It's interesting though that the kind of the way you perceive a childhood as a child is that when you grow older you see it as one event. Like childhood is like one event, and then you become a father yourself and you see how many times you actually interact with your kids and how many times you actually can screw them up. like being angry or getting overly excited about something or criticizing them for the wrong things or actually motivating them for the wrong things, and then they obviously, I mean, you don't think of yourself as so impressionable as a kid, I think, but as an adult you see how impressionable they are, how long they are willing to go to actually make sure that they satisfy their parents' like some wishes and so that's scary. Yeah. Really.
Yeah. And now you have 3 children. How old are they?
I have a son that's 12 years old, and then I have 2 grown-up kids. One is 2 girls. One is in Bergen, studying in Bergen. She's 21, and then another girl that's just finished high school. She's 19.
Yeah. And your choice of career and education, what did you end up choosing to study?
Why did I end up choosing like in Norges Handelshøyskole in Bergen? I'm sorry, Håkon. My brother.
Håkon is your brother.
Yeah,
then?
he's my older brother. When I finished high school, I didn't do well at all. No. I think when you're Russ in Norway, you basically make your decision whether or you want to go to university or any other college or anything. And my grades weren't good enough for anything. So I basically that summer I decided I'm gonna do carpentry or anything else like manual labor. And then my mother asked me whether or not I wanted to actually see if I could go to a private school to see if I can improve my grades enough to get a higher education. Said okay, I'll do that. So I took 19 subjects at night school 1 year. And I improved my grades, so I have straight 6 all over. A student. And when I asked my brother where I should go, I wanted to be an architect, and he said, "Well, that's your tomb, your gravestone. It's cooler if it says managing director than if it says like an architect. So you should go to Handelshøyskolen." So I went to Handelshøyskolen.
I see. So and
I don't know. It's a fun story though.
Yeah, I visualized it on the stone, but he's maybe right.
Yeah, maybe right. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. But maybe who knows in the future? Maybe the stones will be digital.
Yeah. Hopefully not.
Okay. So and then after Handelsskolen, did you soon discover that you liked managing people and building companies up?
No. I went from job to job. It's basically not a planned kind of ascend into the role I have today. I started out working in a small gold mining company which listed on the stock exchange here in Oslo, and was quickly very fond of working with investor relations and talking to investors about the equity story of the company I worked for. And then I moved on there to actually do a lot of advisory within investor relations and financial communications. Started up my own business in 2005 together with 3 colleagues. The company still exists and worked there for about 10 years, and then I was recruited to Equinor. And after a couple of years in Equinor, I was recruited here to take over the role here as the executive vice president of communication. And then after 3 or 4 years here within this role, my affinity towards strategy had been involved enough to take over that role.
Since you mentioned that it wasn't a plan, did you just feel that one thing led to another? Is that something you like to do?
No, I would love to be more, or my mind would love to be more kind of planned. Like you have a plan for every step you do, but I don't.
No,
I'm not. I haven't. I've never.
No. And how was having a family and building a career at the same time?
No, that's a good question, and I think it's a painful question because I think I was asked a question the other day whether or not where would I be if I weren't depressed, and I can say without a doubt that I wouldn't be an executive vice president of any company if I weren't depressed. The drive to actually put me in this chair to actually have this sort of career is based on my anxiety towards not being good enough. So everything I've done has basically been not feeling like I'm good enough and making sure that I produce enough. So I've had weeks where I work like 70 to 80 hours, make sure that, and probably it's not very productive because I mean the result should probably be like 20 hours to do the product, but I spent 70 hours being afraid that someone would kind of call me out for not being good enough for the work I did. And rationally, when you analyze it afterwards, you see that, well, the work I did was very good, and I understand why people were attracted to that sort of work and the abilities I have. but I'm at the moment, and in time, I'm not able to actually see that.
No. So did it take you a while to realize that the main driving force behind working a lot was this belief that you weren't good enough, or did it gradually come to you?
It's gradually kind of become clearer to me during the last years that because you go with this. I've described it for my son like a nightmare, like waking up during the morning. I wake up extremely early, like in the middle of the night sometimes, and I'm not able to actually get back to sleep. And the feeling I have is like a nightmare. You feel your heart rate racing. You feel cold, and I remember having nightmares as a kid. You could just open your eyes and see, oh well, everything is normal, and then go back to sleep. When I open my eyes, it's basically in the nightmare. So I'm the fears that I have isn't like a monster under my bed or anything, and the fears that I have is like not being able to perform the way people expect of me, or not being able to actually be good enough for people. And that goes for like professional life, friendship, everything. And that fear is just anxiety.
And does that also involve in like these thoughts about performance and work, but does it also have a spillover effect in family and you being a father? Do you have thoughts like, I'm not a good enough father, and then...
Oh yeah. All the time. But I think it's been easier professionally, and my wife will probably sign off for this, that it's been easier professionally to actually think that you're not good enough and just step up the game, like work harder to do the job that is that you think people expect. It's harder as a father to do that, and some of the times my main answer to that would be, well, I'm probably not good enough as a father. I should step out, or I should not do the work as being a father. But we stay together, and I'm probably never going to be a perfect dad or a perfect husband. But I think spending a lot of time thinking about it has done some good as well.
See, I think as you mentioned earlier, that many people will resonate with how you describe your feelings and how your reactions to depression is. So can we look a little bit more into like the symptoms you developed? Like when do you think it started? Like this belief that you weren't good enough. Was it back in the university, or?
The feeling of not being good enough, I think I've had all along.
Yeah.
I can't date that back to anything, but the struggle to actually be accepted, the struggle to be connect with people, or being accepted within a group or within friends. I think that struggle has been there all my life.
Yeah.
The anxiety of not being accepted, I think that developed harder during the last years of my university, and even harder during when I started working.
Did you feel that you had to put on a mask socially, or do something that you're looking at
like
the signal?
I have masks that I use all the time. So I have call it masks, or call it kind of roles or strategies for managing different situations. It's become a lot more clearer when you start thinking about what sort of things you do to make sure that you're accepted in a meeting, or that you come over and not being vulnerable for what you actually are and struggle with. So that's masks, armors, roles, anything that I can do to make sure that the people they see is the people I want them to see, not myself.
And did the thoughts like behind this, did they grow stronger? Like, you had thoughts that you're not good enough, and did it snowball into something that you're awful, or why did you do this?
Contempt and like your what do you call it? I know the word in Norwegian, but your feeling or yourself, like the contempt part is very harsh. And I can resonate with people having like eating disorders, looking at themselves in the mirror, and like seeing a fat person, and then doing everything they can to reduce or control the calories. I see the same, but I don't see a fat. I just see someone I despise.
Yeah.
And that's developed harder over time. So your self-feeling or the self-worth is very low, but I can have a confidence that's pretty high when I feel like I'm mastering a task or mastering a situation. I can feel like the confidence is high, but it's always kind of doesn't resonate always with how I look at my self-worth.
I see. And since you mentioned anxiety, did it evolve in a circle that you had a contempt, you overworked, and then you thought, why did I spend so much time doing this? And then you're anxious about something you didn't do or shouldn't have done, or
sure. Yeah, all of the above. Yeah. I think I overanalyze a lot. And that's the part of doing the kind of the 4 o'clock analytical work, waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning and doing like your brain is doing all these calculations, and they're just wrong. I mean, they're just crazy calculations. Yeah. One instance could be that I know that my car is due for service. I haven't reported it in for service or ordered the kind of service guide. And I'm about to do that the next day, and I wake up at 4 in the morning thinking, okay, this is going to cost me a fortune, and then the thoughts just go around in my head, and then make sure that it's like catastrophic thinking, like, okay, the car is going to be condemned, I can't afford to have a car, blah blah blah, and it just increasing, and the feeling that kind of follows in that thought spiral is just draining. So you kind of get lower and lower and lower and lower. So that's what I'm thinking of over analyzing. So breaking that kind of that spiral is important to me. Making sure that I've done that previously, because you're very narcissistic when you do that, like that spiral thing. So breaking out of that and looking at other people or looking outside, just to make sure that you're part of a world where people don't care whether or not you had your car for service or not. That sort of reality check is important to me.
I see. Yeah, so the spiral, like if it begins with a car, then it's the cost, and then it leads to irresponsible father, or something like that, and then you sign on off of that irresponsible father.
Irresponsible family, head of family, not responsible, not able to control my blah blah blah, and then you just increase it to
and from
massive proportions.
From there, it goes to like, since I'm irresponsible, shouldn't I just leave the family, or like is it?
Yeah, you could probably go there, but I think most of the time it ends at the feeling being wrong. So it ends being like dragged down by the feeling, and you feel depressed, and you don't want to go to work, and you don't want.
And then it comes out in sleeping problems, as you mentioned. Is it? Do you think that you wake up early and also because of this?
No, actually the waking up early is pretty new. It's not more than a couple of years ago I started waking up at these hours. I kind of tilt the day a bit, so I get to bed earlier to make sure that I get enough sleep. And if I'm not able to actually sleep any further, I don't lie around in bed and thinking about it. I get up and do some exercise, or get out on my bike, or.
Yeah. When did you realize that what you had was, if we label it, label it depression? When did you when did you realize that what you had is depression?
I think the first time the psychologist, I've been with this. I've had a psychologist that I worked with previously at kind of different points in time. Never had actually until now. I've struggled with getting a good rapport with my psychologist, but I think it's probably The first time was last part of my university, where someone labeled it as a depressive or an episode.
Yeah.
And then I have had the same sort of diagnose like 12 years ago.
Yeah.
And then now again.
Yeah. I see. And when it came up, did you agree? Or did you think it like when it was first mentioned? Or?
No, I don't think I did, and I think it's hard. One of the things that is hard with a psychologist is that you're in a very fragile situation when you meet, so you're not on equal terms.
No.
So you go in there either to actually get your diagnosis, make sure, okay, depression, fine, finally I know what it is. Let's start working with it. Or you go in there and making sure that you actually answer the questions in a way that makes sure that you don't get depression. So it's you need to create kind of that very, very honest rapport, make sure that you actually have a good conversation before you start doing the diagnose tools.
Yeah. Exactly, that is very true. I think diagnostic, just for diagnostic, is a wrong approach. So report is important.
Yeah.
So okay, and when was it that you started to like take it? I know you always taken it seriously, but seriously in a way that you were motivated to try to change something. When did that start happening?
That's the last two years. I've been kind of motivated for that, and I've tried everything like mindfulness apps and doing meditation, training, eating healthier, working less, reading more books than watching TV. All of these kind of natural things, but it's not until like the last 6 months that I've been very, very motivated and very kind of driven to actually get to the bottom of this and make sure that I don't want to experience like these sorts of episodes again. And now it doesn't feel like an episode anymore. Now it feels just like kind of constantly on the wrong side of this plus line.
Yeah.
Like wearing between -8 and -4 on that scale. So I want to break out of that, and at least I want to make sure that I have the tools to actually manage when I feel really down.
Yeah.
And making sure that my kind of the support staff around me, like my family, knows how I'm feeling. So it's easier to actually handle when I have these episodes that I don't want to talk to people or like. So that's been important, being transparent about that.
Yeah.
But that the last 6 months is probably the.
It's great to hear that this has developed this way. Was there any event or an emotions you went through which made you think, okay, Lars Erik, okay, I need to work on this way?
I don't know. I think some of the events that I had was reading a book this spring. I read the book Johan Hari wrote, Lost Connections, that I found extremely interesting, and it really resonated with me. All the kind of lost connections with your kind of the workplace and the work you do, lost connection with meaning of life, lost connection with friends.
Yeah.
That resonated very much, and I suddenly kind of, it appeared to me like an epiphany that one of the things that we really crave and we need as human beings is belonging and connection. And the things that we do to get that acknowledgement actually produces the exact opposite result, makes you go further away from the connection that you desire. And when I suddenly understood that, it made sense to me that being honest about who I am to myself, first and foremost, and then being honest about who I am to others was the actual kind of remedy to make kind of the connection part work better. And that I felt that after I published my story.
Was it a relief when you came out with the story and it was out there?
Yeah, it's partly a relief, and then my rational brain says that, are you crazy, Lars Erik. You're kind of like you're a fairly unknown like an EVP, and then now you're partly known, but you're known for being depressed.
Yeah.
But I have to say that probably people outside, and they see how many podcasts I'm at or how many kind of media articles written, they're getting the impression that I only do talk about depression. I don't. I my kind of 95% of my work here is done without talking about depression at all. So that's but being open about it made my colleagues and the people reporting to me, it made it easier for them to actually know who I am and being prepared for what sort of reaction they get. So that's been a lot easier.
Yeah. Has it had any negative effect? Has it?
Not so far.
No?
Not so far. It's been the attention, the massive attention can be draining, but not as draining as the positive effect. So net positive so far.
So net positive. It's good to hear. And tell me a little bit about, if you're willing to share, of course, but your private life. How has it been for the family and your wife?
My wife has lived with me since like the last 20 years, so she's seen kind of firsthand how I am. Yeah.
Were you always open with her?
Yeah. It's hard. It's hard to kind of hide when you live together. I think. So that's one of the major difficulties with not being open and not being ready to actually bring your baggage to work, is that the baggage is coming home regardless of your openness or not. And that I think I've stated that I wear my backpack to work. I ride my bike, and then I take my backpack off and put it next to the kind of entrance, and then I go to work without my backpack, and then when I leave for home, I put my backpack back on and come home. And I think that's as a picture or an illustration of me actually having to deal with the depression at home regardless, and my family actually having to deal with me being depressed as well. And the workplace not. But it kind of became more pronounced on the workplace as well during the last year and during the pandemic and during kind of the different kind of situations evolving. So people were noticing, probably, I think that they haven't told me that, but noticing that I had kind of mood swings and weren't always in a good mood. And that, so that kind of pushed me towards actually being open how I felt. Yeah. But the family is always kind of taking the hard hit, and which is it's sad that's the way it is. Yeah.
So you talk about the hard hit. Do you feel guilty about that, or have you forgiven yourself, or how do you think about that today?
Yeah, I feel guilty and shameful for everything, but yeah, your conscience takes it and everything. But I mean, it's in the past. I can't do much about that. I can do something about the future. So being open and being able to actually take the counseling I'm getting and including my family and what I learn. And talking about it as openly as I can in a way that also kids can understand. I think that's important.
But do you think that even though you might feel shame and guilt thinking back about the family life, do you think that they might agree that it has been negative, or do you think that?
Yeah, I think they would agree that it has been negative. Whether or not they see me as a bad person for this being negative, I don't think. I think they have tremendous. I mean, I think we have. It's not like they think any worse of me, but I think that the effects of a depression is is something the family has to
They've seen it.
endure.
Yeah. Do you then talk less at home, or do you cancel fishing trips with the kids? Or
I cancel everything.
Yeah.
That's one of the kind
Okay.
of go to strategies is cancel.
It's cancel. Okay.
Yeah, but I think one of the things that is difficult for the close family is that you, when you're depressed, this is very honest. When you're depressed, you're very short-sighted. You get kind of myopic in everything that you do. The most important thing is that you get through the day or get through the next hour.
Yeah.
And then when somebody in the family wants to plan something like a week ahead or a month ahead, and you're getting like, yeah, whatever, I don't want to talk about it. And I think it's hard to actually plan for vacation during the summer when your spouse basically has an attention span of the next few hours. So that's one of the things that's been hard.
So when the family was suggesting a vacation or something, you maybe procrastinated the decision,
or procrastinating it, pushing it forward, and say, can we take a decision on it next week? Or
was there often misunderstandings, for example, between you and your wife, that when you acted like this, she thought maybe you didn't care, or were not?
No, I don't think so.
She knew that it was a depression.
Yeah. I think she's. I think she's smart enough to understand what it was. Yeah. But I don't.
So at home,
I don't know whether you have to ask her, I guess.
But at home, then you say it's hard to plan, and then you might cancel. Are there other things? Do you talk less at home, or can people see that Daddy is a little bit down today?
You kind of go into yourself. You don't push people away. You just remove yourself from a situation, like go to bed early or.
Yeah. Did you then think, okay, I'm down now. I wanna keep myself away from the children, so I better be alone.
No, you think that once you're through it, you go back and think, okay, that was kind of that sort of situation. But while you're in it, you're all consumed by it. You're not actually thinking very rationally about, no, now I'm depressed, I need to talk about being depressed. You're basically are, and then everything around like rational thoughts go into actually making yourself feeling better. I need to have a run, or I need to go lie down, or I need to take a kind of remove myself from this situation. And then afterwards you think, okay, that was probably a depressed kind of episode, and I should have treated it as such. But it's like it's very narcissistic. It's very self-centered. Short-sighted and self-centered is the kind of the ways I can recognize being in a kind of depressive episode.
I understand that you choose to use those words. I don't though agree that it's self-centered and narcissistic. That's something else. I think it's one of the symptoms. But I understand that some may look at it like that. But
actually, one of the things to break free of this is actually seeing how you can help others. And refocusing your attention rather than actually focusing on getting better yourself, just saying, "Oh, this is it. This is how it is," and then recentering and not trying to focus on someone else and how you can make those around you better. I think that to me has been the way out of this.
Many people who suffer from the in the same manner of you, they might develop negative behaviors or seek into like trying to control their reactions in a negative way, or they might seek into gambling or drugs or something to increase the dopamine level or the attention to something else. Did you develop any negative habits of alcohol, or did anything like that also during that period?
No. Well, kind of overly interested in cycling and riding my bike is probably the worst kind of consequence of my indulgences. No, I haven't indulged in either drinking too much or eating too much or smoking or doing anything and gambling or anything. So that's not been my way. So the only thing is like 6 hours rides on Saturday. That's good for me, not always good for the family.
No. I see. Okay. So, but as you mentioned, bike cycling as a positive coping mechanism. Sometimes in situations it might be an avoidance strategy or a compensatory strategy, but it's a positive thing in general.
Yeah, come to think of it, I probably the part where kind of work has been and then kind of negative is that you use work for escape. And I think that's something a lot of us do.
Yeah,
it's something because at least for me, I like to control things. I like being in control, and it's easier to be in control at work where I have everything and I can control the agenda and what I need to do and not do, and than it is with the expectations of a family. So that's probably one of the things that you, as a workaholic, that you basically use work as a dopamine kick rather than anything else.
Yeah. If we would ask your family, children and wife, to mention 3 or 4 most positive qualities you have, what would they say?
That's a very hard question for me to answer. They would probably say I'm kind. I'm depends on the mood, but I'm dedicated and interested.
Daddy is kind and interested and dedicated in what I do. They might say that.
Yeah. I think so. And we're a close-knit family. Very private, and but I think I find it hard to actually answer that sort of questions to what other people think of me. And that goes with everyone.
Yeah.
I have, and this is hard for me because I tend to treat positive criticism as kind of just niceties, and then when it's negative, I treat it as that's the honest way of looking at it. So I can get like 10 positive comments and then 1 negative, and then the 1 negative is kind of the rule for everything else. So I have a hard time actually analyzing or talking about what other people think of me.
Yeah. And when do you think that when you start to think and feel the positive things that they might say to you, do you think your natural reaction is that you don't deserve it, or that you don't deserve to think about that you're dedicated, or do you think that's one of the reasons?
I don't know. Right now I'm thinking of all the things that all the arguments for not being dedicated, all the arguments for not being very kind. So that's kind of the way my mind works.
Yeah. Very good that you're sharing this, and I know many people will resonate with what you're saying. I think every person is very unique, but depression is one of the largest health problem we have, and it's a real thing. Every year there are 10% of population having depression. So I'm very happy that you're so open about your experiences. So that is very, very good. Good to hear. I have to ask, as a psychologist, so I'm fascinated with the work you've done and looking into yourself, and then you're looking into like this need for belonging, and that you're you're afraid that people might not like you, or that you're not good enough. If we skip looking at why is it so, because I often think it's very hard. There isn't one event, I think, but what do you think is your way to overcome this, to change this?
Oh, that's a good question. And it's hard to whether or not it's my ideas or whether or not it's things that I've read. But there's a lot of books that I read that resonates with some of the meaning some of the things that I've said about belonging. I remember talking to my kids about like birthday parties in schools where they're not included or actively excluded. I think those two words are used like we need to include people. But the sense of belonging comes from my own feelings. It's not something. It's like if a group of people were here to say we like you here in our group and we like to make you feel welcome. The feeling of belonging comes from me and my self-worth. So once you actually have very low self-worth or despise yourself, or it's hard to think that you're accepted by anyone. So what happened when I published my story is that it's like an onion. It's like the depression is in the core, and then outside of the depression there's some part of it that I don't think I'm good enough, for that people will at some point say that, well, you're being exposed for not being good enough. And outside of that again there's the shame of me feeling depressed, since I've grown up in the world's richest country where people are very well treated, you have everything you need. Why the hell should you be depressed? So once I actually hit the publish button and saying that I was depressed, all of those two are more or less kind of, it's not taken away, but it's easier to talk to and talk about. And that sort of vulnerability that I've been actively trying to hide for so long opens up some new venues and opportunities to actually connect with people that I feel have some of the same views that I have. And so that makes me kind of, the experiment I've done is that being open about something that you don't want to share, something that bugs you and hinders you in being accepted, actually is the strategy to be accepted. And the strategies that I've done to hide what I have inside and what I'm shameful, the strategies the strategies that I have is designed to make me into something that I think people would accept. But the connection and the belonging is just on a very kind of, it's not real. So, one of the things that I think is important for people is to start treating depression and mental illness like any other somatic disease, like break your leg or cancer or anything else, obesity or anything else, and then make sure that this is so open that we talk about it without shame. Because there's no evidence saying that people that are depressed have less capabilities to do what they do. Or
correct.
So we see you, and I find that interesting. That's been very supporting. That's looking at some of the kind of the high performing sports stars saying that they are depressed. Kevin Love, the basketball player, or like the gymnast, the American gymnast. I can't remember her name. And they still perform at their best. They're still very, very good basketball players, or gymnasts, or tennis players, or golf players, or whatever. And I think that's I think they all kind of stated that being open about it made them realize that it's easier to actually talk about it. It's easier to connect with the people that you have around you. But there's like connection, feeling meaningful. Those sort of things are probably more important to me than looking backwards and finding what happened.
Finding the cause.
Exactly.
Well, I think as you are describing it, I think I'm very happy to hear that using one of your greatest capability, logical thinking, and also your compassion for people and relations as one of your strategy, and not thinking about what you should be doing in order to be accepted. You're doing something which is truthful for you, and then if people will accept you for that or not, that's up to them. And rather than using things on what should I do to be accepted. So I think that's very well put. That's very, very well explained from you. Going into the workplace, now you're a managing director, and we talked about the mental health.
I'm not a managing director, though. We have a managing director.
We have a managing director.
There's a CEO sitting there in the office beside her. No, I'm part of the management group, the senior executive group. So I have some responsibilities in that part, but I'm not the CEO.
Okay, that's good that you corrected that. Otherwise, the managing director would have sent this
no, I don't think
the video what were you saying?
No, he wouldn't
exactly.
say that,
and it's good that you corrected that. But you're involved in the strategy with people at Veidekke, one of the largest constructions companies in the Nordics. Mental health in the workplace. Do you think we're changing? Do you think we're realizing the importance of it and how it relates to true business outcomes?
Yeah, I think we're just on the verge of a big transformation in that part. I think the work we're doing now on diversity, regardless of which sort of diversity, whether or not it's gender or it's other sorts of diversity, I think we're just starting that journey, and which is very, very pleasing to see. And I think that the openness about mental health or neurodiversity and that sort of thing is really coming up. So hopefully, I mean, I think what we've seen during the pandemic is that the way we are working and the way we are treating our employees is not exactly very sustainable. I think I read Adam Grant say the other day that if you think that your employees need a vacation to kind of recharge, you're probably kind of taking too much out of them during the work time. They shouldn't be use their holidays to recharge. They should use their holidays to celebrate. And I think that we've treated employees and people that work in organizations in any business as kind of drivers, or like elements for growth or elements for creating value. And I think you need to see them as people instead, and seeing the potential and seeing how they can actually contribute to a better society, a better kind of so there's a lot of things working there to make sure that sustainable workplaces. And I've said this many times. I think we're now at a point where we've accepted that people with mental health issues can come to work, and we accept them with that sort of things. I think we need to start seeing businesses creating good mental health instead, and making sure that's a result of the workplace.
That it makes business sense to have an active policy, and what can we contribute to having mental health as good as we can.
It's strange to see that I mean, if you look at some of the paradoxes here, is that you have Norwegian's top management people going Veidekke, and they're using their mental coach to make them go faster. And then when they go into the workplace, they think that mental health is something that's a problem. So if you actually ascribe to the part where a mental trainer or someone can actually mentally help you to go faster in Veidekke, then you should also see that some of the employees and most of the employees need that sort of coaching in their day-to-day life to make sure that their potential is met.
I couldn't agree more. Looking back on your life, if you could change anything, what would it be? Would you have gone to architect school?
No,
are you happy with your brother counter argument?
Very bad architect. I think. No, I think we end up where we are based on a lot of kind of different factors. You kind of you choose your path through life, some sort, and going back and regretting or thinking that I could do anything different.
Yeah.
If I were to think one thing that I could do different is actually doing something about my depression earlier than I did. Yeah. Taking care of it and looking at it seriously once I had my first episodes, and doing the responsible thing of actually seeking help.
Yeah. It's good that you say and share. I'm very happy that you did, and I know it's inspired a lot of people.
Thank you.
Including me.
Thank you very much.
It's been a pleasure to have you.
Thank you for the invitation.